Hey guys, welcome to week 2 of your composition unit. This time, this lesson, you'll also be composing, but you'll be composing with a little bit stricter guidelines. So last week we talked about how composition is really just organizing sound and silence, but obviously there's a lot of varieties of sound that you could use. So this week we're focusing on timbre. So timbre is what differentiates instruments. The technical definition, and if you're following along on your worksheet, you should keep this in mind as you're filling out the vocabulary section. Timbre is the quality of a sound that makes it unique from other sounds. So like the difference between a trumpet and a violin. Like they might both be playing the same note, but they're going to sound very different. They each have their own voice. Another way to think about it is when you're listening to a recording, timbre is what allows you to identify that, oh, that's a guitar, and oh, that is a cello. So it just helps you to identify because each instrument, including your voice, has its own unique signature. The word instrumentation is another way of saying choice of instruments. So that's vocab question number 2. So the word instrumentation is another way of saying choice of instruments. So for this next lesson, when you're choosing which instruments you want to play, that would be the instrumentation of your piece. So I might say, hey, what's the instrumentation of your piece? You're going to say, I'm going to have 3 djembes and a xylophone. Alright, and then the last one, color is the word we use to describe the difference between the sound of one instrument and the sound of another. It's just like some jargon that people use, so you could say, oh, well, the color of that xylophone is slightly different than the color of a metallophone. So it's really just like another way of saying like timbre, so like differing timbres, differing colors. Alright, so for the student task part of your lesson today, you are going to be composing again, much like last week, so you're going to be creating 4 patterns that are 4 beats long. They must be 4 beats long. Check and make sure they're 4 beats long. If you aren't sure, ask your neighbor to double check for you, okay? So, try and keep it to the same rhythms that we've been using, stuff that you could read. If you cannot read it right off the bat, then maybe don't put it in the box. So, it's got to be a pattern that we can all read and we can all do. So simple is not bad. Simple is definitely not bad. So keep it to our 16th notes, our ticka-tickas. Keep it to our 8th notes, the TTs. Keep it to the tas, the tas, the half notes, and the whole notes, and the corresponding rests. Like don't get anything too crazy in there. Just keep it simple. 4 beats, simple. So you're going to write your patterns in the boxes just like last time, and then you're going to move on to instrumentation. So that's going to be the next step. So you're going to be thinking about different effects for each sound that you want, and so you're going to be picking instruments based off of the effects that you want. So you're picking the timbre that best fits the description of the thing that we're trying to accomplish. So keep it limited to classroom instruments just because we don't really have access to others at the moment. So that means the gong, the triangle, the xylophone, the metallophone, glockenspiels, stuff like that. Just keep it within the realm of what we have access to for now. So what I've done for you is something really simple. I've created, or I've asked you to just describe a couple instruments that would fit each sound. Now there's not really like a right or wrong answer, but do put some thought into this because there's definitely more correct answers, and there are some answers that are more correct than others. So for example, the first one says, you want to portray a big dog chasing a tiny bird. So that's the story we're trying to tell with our instruments. Remember how we talked about Peter and the wolf, which told a story where each of the animals had their own voice, had their own instrument. So that's kind of what you're doing here on a very small level. So the first one says it's a big dog, and so what instruments or timbres would you use for a big dog? Now once again, you're thinking about classroom instruments, but think about big dogs are usually loud. There's a bark to it, so it might sound a little harsher. So just something to think about. And then the next one is the tiny bird. Which instruments and timbres would you use there? That's up to you, but think about how birds fly and how they flutter, and they're generally very light, very sweet. So you want your instruments to also reflect those things. Now, instruments can also be good for verbs and action. So this next one is chasing music. So pick which instruments you would use to make it sound like they're being chased and to describe how you make that happen. So for me, I might suggest using a xylophone. Okay, so the reason I say xylophone is because there are certain ways that you can make sounds on the xylophone that might sound very continuous, very crazy, very rapid. So when you're thinking about a chase scene, right, it's not like these short, simple notes. Also, I have a xylophone here. They aren't these short, simple notes. They are, they're ongoing. So in my case, I would think that the timbre of xylophone would work really well for a chase because I can, so that sounds very hectic and chaotic and going back and forth a lot like a chase would. Okay, so all that is to say, for C, when it says chasing music, you're going to pick which instruments and timbres and describe how you make the sound. So for my case, I would have just said xylophone is my pick, and I would do it by sliding the mallet back and forth so it makes like a sound that sounds like wind. Like, you don't need to know these technical terms, just describe it as best you can and I'll get the gist. Then another one is a giant clap of thunder. So you need to think of an instrument that would sound like thunder. So there are lots of great options in this class for that, so I will leave that up to your imagination so you can choose. Once again, if you're going to play it in a different way, like an alternative way, like maybe you're not going to play the xylophone like it normally is played, then you need to describe that like I just did with the sliding. Alright. Now, after all of that, after you've written your patterns and your instrumentation, you are going to write a composition. Once again, you are trying to think, do the instruments play together or separately? Do you want them in layers? Do you want them going back and forth? Elaborate below. And this composition needs to be about a big dog chasing a tiny bird. So when you organize, you have to think, how is that going to work? So, for example, you might want to introduce the characters first. So you might have the big dog instrument playing one pattern, and then the bird playing a different pattern in its own instrument. Or they each play the same pattern but at different times. So the dog plays patterns 1, 2, 3, and 4 on its instrument, and then the bird plays patterns 1, 2, 3, and 4 on its instrument, and then they play together, or there's chasing music or whatever. So you can format that however you want. I've included an example in our description so that you can kind of see what I have in mind, but however you want to organize it is totally fine. I left blank space on the page for that purpose, so feel free to use that space, feel free to use scraps, whatever you need. Other than that, that's all you have to do this week. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm right outside again, but really there's no wrong answer here, so have fun and just show me that you're going to put some intention behind it. As long as it's not, just like boring old nothing, then I'm going to be pleased. So we will play these on Monday, and I can't wait to hear what you guys come up with. All right, bye.